In this video, I want to share with you the 5 reasons that I love masonry. Even as a boy, I can remember being particularly impressed with brick and stone and concrete. I couldn't really put reasons to it at the time, but I certainly can now, and that's what I want to share with you. The first reason I love masonry is strength over time. The second reason is classy good looks. The third reason I like masonry is disaster resistance, as I'll show you. The fourth reason is reduced liability, which matters to contractors, as I'll explain. And the fifth reason I love masonry is because it's famous, or rather, it makes places famous. I took this photo back in 2006 when I was touring masonry structures in Europe, and it's a perfect example of the strength over time concept. This is a Roman aqueduct. It transferred water from a lake to a nearby town, and this structure is 2,000 years old. I was going to call them 2,000-year-old remains, but they're actually in excellent shape. The water flowed down a trough in the center, and it can still do that today, and all without any maintenance over the last 20 centuries. What else can match that? This bridge is in the northern Spanish town called Ripoll, and it's a perfect example of how masonry lasts. It's built on the arch principle, which relies on the incompressibility of masonry for its strength, and it's stone, the classic masonry material, still unmaintained for centuries and in excellent condition. This is one of my favorite kinds of brickwork. It's antique brick, and it's got some features that I think are a perfect example of the classiness of masonry. Notice the highly varied color of the bricks. There's some very dark ones, some very light ones, some reddish ones, brown ones, and they're all put together in a random pattern. There's also the arch, a really excellent way to span openings. And look here, the bricks along the edge of this opening are chamfered, which adds a lot of beauty to the structure as well. There's brick in front, and then a Roman arch over here. The combination, I think, just looks so good. This image is of some stonework that I've done myself. I quarry this stone by hand from limestone outcroppings where I live, and I shape the stone into, in this case, what's called a broken ashlar pattern. This is a classic stone masonry pattern, and there's some details to it. You see, every so often there's a squarish stone, so pretty well as tall as it is wide. Here's another one down below. There's others all over the wall, too. Now, the thing to understand about these square stones in the broken ashlar pattern is that they never touch each other. They're always separated by something, and that something is usually a longer horizontal stone that takes up roughly 1/3 or 1/2 of the overall height of the square pattern. That's what broken ashlar is all about. Notice the shadow lines here. That's what I find really attractive about stonework, is the light and shadow that plays off the face. And you'll notice the mortar joints here. I've followed a traditional method where a level and a special shaping tool are used to create very regular mortar joints that I think look just terrific with the rough stone. This is one of my favorite examples of the disaster resistance of masonry. This almost completely undamaged home went through Hurricane Ivan, and as you can see, it looks quite normal. Nothing else around it looks normal. The wind was and water was strong enough to push cars and rocks and all kinds of debris against the house, to rip trees apart, just to destroy everything else around, including most of the other houses. But this house was fine, being made of masonry. Here's another image of the same house from a different angle. Look at full-size trees ripped apart by the storm, debris pushed up in the front yard, and yet here somehow this house, looking like the day it was finished, is fine and undamaged. Reduced liability is another virtue that masonry delivers. When this material is used correctly, it results in buildings that are very reliable, much less likely to cause callbacks and problems that could be very expensive. As I mentioned before, masonry makes places famous. Think about it for a minute. How many world-renowned places are famous and also have a lot of masonry structures? This is one of them. This is Quebec City, and it's got some buildings that are hundreds of years old, in this case made of stone. You have solid lintels, real stone chimneys, steep roofs. It just looks terrific all around. This amazing building is in Barcelona, Spain. It is the basilica called Sagrada Familia, and it was begun in 1882. As you can see, it's a completely masonry structure, and it is expected to be finished in 2026 or 2028. So like a lot of structures of this kind, it's long term, but it's also shockingly beautiful. It's a combination of poured masonry and chiseled stonework. Right now there are 8 spires on this structure. When it's completed, there will be 18 in all. So yet another example of how a place is enhanced and made famous by masonry. Closer to home, we've got the Prince of Wales Hotel. This is one of many masonry structures in the great little place called Niagara on the Lake. It's a long name, so people just use the letters. But here we've got a classic example of brickwork from the 1800s. We have the lighter courses of bricks on the corners, the darker brick in the middle, and all in all, just a wonderful structure that enhances the town and the region. Back to Spain again for a moment, and I want to show you how masonry often takes on a kind of organic quality. This is a stone masonry structure, and you can see the different features there with the orange trees and fruit just growing out there alongside of the carvings. And it's a combination that I don't see in any other kind of material, where the masonry takes on a kind of organic quality. The last place I want to show you, a place where masonry can impart a little bit of famousness to a location, is on Manitoulin Island, where I live. This is a stone silo. It was built in the 1920s, as far as I can tell, and it shows the example of that broken ashlar stoneworking pattern, where none of the square stones touch each other. It gives it a nice rhythm. Even though this structure is almost 100 years old, it's still true and straight and looks quite a bit like the day it was made. And that's in sharp contrast to the barn that's not next to it anymore and other structures that are gone too. So it gives our place a little bit of fame.